Is it possible to live in a campervan in central London, especially when working full-time and dealing with congestion charges, high crime rates, no parking, and people working in finance? In mid-February, I went viral on social media when I documented what a day living in central London in a van looks like, leading to newspaper articles and TV interview requests, with everyone keen to know one thing. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly how I spent my first week living full-time in a campervan in central London. From how I managed to avoid traffic wardens and the congestion charge, to the effect it had on my own well-being, and I'll also be answering whether or not I've actually been able to save any money. Is van life in central London really a sustainable option, or will I be forever burdened to the purgatory of living in a flat share in Tooting Broadway for the rest of my existence? I arrived in the Big Smoke all bleary-eyed and excited. After taking in all of the major sites like Brent Cross Shopping Centre, Collier's Wood Tower and this block of flats above Elephant and Castle Tube Station that has a gym and shop built in, so that residents never have to interact with their local community, it was time to face the first challenge of London van life. Where was I going to park? London is notoriously difficult to park in, with most of the city's parking heavily permitted between 8:30 AM and 6 PM. Luckily, it was 6 o'clock by the time I started looking, so I saddled up on a quiet road where I could legally park until the morning. With the blinds drawn and the lights dimmed, I was feeling good on my first night. I'd done van life all over Europe before, and while I was tucked up in bed here eating some food and watching some Netflix, I could have been parked up absolutely anywhere. But morning soon came and reality set in. I wasn't anywhere, I was in Willesden Green, and I was parked in a permit-only zone. However, I had a trump card up my sleeve that would keep the traffic wardens away and buy me a precious extra 2 hours. I'm going to need you to stay with me here. I parked my white van up next to a school. The Great Wildebeest Migration, the annual Monarch Butterfly Migration, both pale in comparison to the gargantuan stampede of Range Rover and Porsche Cayenne driving yummy mummies who do the school run every morning. This meant the road I was on was chock-a-block until 10 AM, and it's an unspoken rule amongst the traffic wardens in central London not to ticket during the school run, which gave me time to shower at the gym and start work. But before long, the mums returned home to their online craft businesses, leaving me exposed. I was nowhere near ready to leave, so would have to take special measures to avoid being ticketed. Which is where this button came in. I'm not exactly sure what it's put in the van for, but I know that pressing it means that traffic wardens just think you're stopped for about 5 minutes, making you basically invisible to them. And for the next 4 hours, I was able to stay where I was, making it the entire day without getting a ticket. This was an easy win. Tomorrow would be much harder because I had to go into the office, meaning I'd have to leave the van on its own for at least 8 hours. A friend got in touch to tell me they had a space I could park in for a few days on an industrial estate near their art studio. This was absolutely clutch, but there was a problem. The space was a 30-minute drive away, and to get there meant I would have to tackle a new obstacle: ULEZ. The ultra-low emission zone is in effect all over London, and while newer vans might be exempt, my old girl isn't, which means I'll have to pay £12.50 the moment I pass one of the 3,700 ULEZ cameras that occupy the roads day and night, waiting like little peeping toms to take a sly photo of our backside. These cameras were a completely different prospect to traffic wardens. I could outthink traffic wardens, I could outrun traffic wardens, I could outmaneuver traffic wardens. But these cameras are cold calculated machines. They can't be bargained with, they can't be reasoned with, they don't feel pain or pity or remorse, and they won't stop, ever, until they have my £12.50. Some people might argue that it's my choice to be in a non-ULEZ compliant vehicle, and that I should just pay the money if I want to drive in London. And fair enough, I will. If a camera catches me. But ULEZ was invented by the same government who use workarounds so that they can dump billions of litres of sewage into the Thames every year, and buy clean energy from other countries to falsify hitting climate targets. So if they're using loopholes, I'm going to find loopholes too. So I woke up early that morning and set out to create a route that would take me to my next park up without passing a single camera. It was painstaking as there were nearly 100 cameras in my way, but after persevering, I had a route that would take me to my park up without triggering a single ULEZ camera. All I had to do was follow maps. Things started well. But then, I made a crucial error.
There isn't a turn in! No! Stop me, it's not...
Not only did I have to pay the £12.50, but the elongated route took me 2 hours, and used 3 times the diesel I would have if I'd gone the normal way. I walked solemnly to the tube, realising now that ULEZ cameras were something I simply would not be able to get around. I swallowed the cost and went to my job, which for privacy reasons, I'll describe to you the same way I do to my nan at Christmas, as something in the media. Life was good at the industrial estate. It was nice to be free from the stress of traffic wardens and ULEZ cameras, even if it was just for a little while. And I was surrounded by salt-of-the-earth people who grafted hard and earned their money. I really felt like I had transcended into doing proper van life. Was the industrial estate quite the same as the Tuscan countryside or the south of France? No. Was I parked up next to an abattoir and occasionally kept up at night by the sound of slaughtered pigs? Yes. But it didn't matter, because I had become what I'd set out to be, a central London van lifer. But then, something happened that would change everything. I went, quote-unquote, viral. I always thought that one day I might become famous for something, but I didn't think that something would be thousands of comments on TikTok saying that I look like I haven't showered in weeks, and accusing me of shitting under a tree at Hampstead Heath. There were some nicer messages too, like people offering me food or telling me I could park on their driveway, But I couldn't help feeling strange, like I'd been put into the same bracket as Just Stop Oil protesters or people who go to raves sober. The most uncomfortable bit of it all was that the internet had collectively decided I was homeless, which up until this point wasn't really something I'd ever considered myself to be. Maybe they had a point with the lack of showers, but I had a job where I earned okay money and could theoretically afford to rent in a house share if I wanted to. I'd been enjoying myself before, so why did I now feel so ashamed and embarrassed? Up until this week, people were always jealous when I told them I owned a camper van. Someone even once called me life goals. But now I've got comments from people like Steffen in Bolton, telling me that if he were in my shoes, he'd kill himself. Aside from that, I'd been doxed by about 40 people who said they knew exactly where I was parked, so it was time to move again, firstly for my personal safety, and secondly to do something to lift not only my own mood, but the internet's perception of London van life. I wanted to prove that you could enjoy London just as much living in a van as someone who lived in a house or a flat. So I pulled a sickie at work, parked up the van outside a friend's house who had a guest permit I could use, and went out to explore the city. There's nothing people in London love more than queuing at bakeries for pastries made popular by London-based, food-focused Instagram accounts. So I decided to go to Toad Bakery in Camberwell. However, the line was far too long and they were selling out of pastries. So instead I went to Greg's. Afterwards I went to an art gallery. I don't really understand art of any kind, so I looked at some paintings long enough to try and trick my mind into finding them interesting. After feeling nothing at all, I went for a walk in the park instead. As I looked around at families, friends and couples enjoying the weather together, I couldn't help but feel disconnected from everyone. What is it that everyone in this city seemed to have that I didn't? The answer was as obvious as the drug deal being conducted in front of me by the 2 men on Lime bikes. You're just not supposed to live in a van in central London. When I returned to the van a short while later, it seemed that both the Universe and Lambeth Council agreed, because it turned out that my friend had entered my number plate incorrectly for the guest permit form, and I had received a parking ticket. London van life had taken me by the throat, held me down, and asked me if I consented to light to medium choking. I declined the offer. Yet the weekend hadn't come soon enough, and I was seriously considering giving it all up for good. I was helping a friend move out of his flat share in Tooting. The room was still available, and I was seriously considering moving in. While I refilled my water in the bathroom, I imagined myself living there, with its patioed garden, a dishwasher, flatmates who probably wouldn't murder me, and equally probably weren't worried that I might murder them. Life could be good here. I could be good here. Then it hit me. I needed to leave. It had dawned on me right then that I had been thinking about London van life all wrong. I thought that living in a van had relegated me to the furthest edges of society, cursed to a disconnected outer bubble of depression and loneliness. But that wasn't it at all. I wasn't depressed because I was living in a van. I was depressed because I was living in London. I'm in my mid to late 20s, plodding along in a career I'm not really sure I enjoy, struggling to save any real money, with absolutely no certainty what the future looks like. And my friends are all in the same boat, be it financially, with their relationships, or when they look at their hairlines. Yet all around me in London, people my own age and younger seem to be buying garden flats in Brixton and concierge new builds in Elephant and Castle. And this isn't a knock on them, or their LinkedIn influencer dads, or their blue text on Wikipedia mums. But the same issue remained. I was on a financial merry-go-round in a city I couldn't really afford to be in long term, and I wasn't sure what to do. In doing van life in London, I suppose I was doing the same thing every so-called van life is trying to do. to break free from not just the monotony of life, but also the real financial and housing insecurity that's plaguing my generation. Van life in central London hasn't solved any of my real problems, but at least I've shown myself there are some other ways of doing things, and I've saved some money along the way. Wait, did I even save any money? I'm going to break down exactly how much I spent doing 7 days of van life in central London, to work out if it's actually a financially viable plan. First though, I'll set a benchmark of what an average living expense looks like for someone sharing a flat in London. I'm not using any average statistics from the internet for this, I'm just going off what I know my friends spend. A month's rent for an okay flat share is usually around £1,000, and bills usually work out to be about £150. I'm only including these as things like food and going out are variable and not dependent on where you're living. This comes to a total of around £230 per week to live somewhere and have the amenities that come with it. During my week of living in the van, I had to drive 4 times, which meant I had to pay 4 lots of ULEZ for a total of 50 quid. After my elongated journey to try and avoid ULEZ, I used up quite a lot of fuel, which I reckon was about 30 quid. I showered at the gym, where my membership is £40 a month, so that's about £10 for the week. Parking on my friend's permit for 2 days cost £12 and my parking fine was £60, putting us so far at a total of £162. But the costs don't really end there. To live in this van, I have to pay tax, insurance, MOT, and last year that came to £1,800. That works out to about £30 a week. And when you add in that it cost me about £16,000 to buy and convert the van in the first place, you're not really getting any kind of meaningful saving, especially when you're living in a high cost of living city like London. And while you can theoretically drive the van and work anywhere, my job's 3 days a week in the office. The reality is that living in a van, especially in London, just isn't a guaranteed way of saving money. And that brings me to my final point. Doing van life in central London in no way equates to being homeless. Firstly, it costs way too much money and relies on having spent way too much money in the past. But secondly, for me at least, I'm doing this completely as a choice. While everyone has their own situation going on, being homeless equates to so many social and financial complexities, which I and so many other people living in vans don't necessarily have to face. I'm not homeless because I choose to live in a van, just the same as Tabitha from Wimbledon isn't homeless because she chooses to stay in hostels while she backpacks around Thailand. I'm not sure how long I'll continue to do van life in London, but London and the UK in general isn't becoming any easier of a place for people to live. And every day there's going to be more people looking for alternative ways of living. If you are struggling, I've linked some resources in the description that might help. What's next for van life in London? I don't know. Why don't you let me know what you want to see more of in the comments? Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe.